This is the Real Estate Investing Abundance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. I know you're excited to get into today's show, but I have a very exciting announcement to share with you before moving to the show. We've just launched a complimentary and comprehensive webinar that, among other things, shows you how to legally use passive real estate investing to reduce your taxes, recession-proof your nest egg, and take the sting out of inflation. If you are curious to learn more, go to stevetucker.com/webinar. It is complimentary and only takes a couple of minutes of your time. Once again, that is stevetucker.com/webinar. I'll see you in the webinar. Enjoy today's show. Hello, enlightened investors. Welcome back to Real Estate Investing Abundance. I'm your host, Dr. Allen, and it's a pleasure to be back with you again today. We're going to take a look at the life story of one individual from rock and roll to real estate. And with us today is a rock star, and his name is Brent Barcus, and he, with a creativity, work ethic, and a keen eye, he developed a knack for playing the guitar, and he ended up as a lead guitarist for Shania Twain. And we're going to let him tell us about that journey from rock star to real estate investor. So, Brent, take us into the show and share a memorable experience that helped you to be who you are today.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks. That's very kind of you. Great intro, and really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor and a joy to be here. Yeah. So rock and roll to real estate. I'd say a early memory. I grew up around in the Midwest in St. Louis, Missouri, around a mother and a father that were just amazing, committed to their kids. And I would have to say my dad was a commercial realtor and broker and developer, very creative man, and still is. But I have a lasting memory of just his involvement in my life, from early days of sports to music to, showing me real estate, driving me around, and being in the car with him, listening to St. Louis Cardinals radio, baseball radio, and looking at property with them, not really knowing why I was there. But I think he just loved to hang out, and being a coach of mine in basketball growing up, and then also just the full support of my music career has been, I guess, a very lasting memory of just the support my parents have given me through all my endeavors.
Well, take us back to those early days and your commitment to guitar and what all you went through to develop obviously the talent, but talent is nothing without determination to build the skill. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I have an older brother, 6 years older, that's a drummer. And so I grew up in a house where my parents loved music. They loved to dance. They didn't play instruments, but I think just the love of music, their desire to have it in the house, in the home, and let us experiment with instruments at sometimes loud levels, especially having drums in the house can be quite, before electric drums were around, it was real drums. So just to let us do that and to have fun playing our favorite music, whether it's off the radio or vinyl at the time or 8-track, whatever it was. But I think for us, it was just exploring our different things that could be gifts, or, how we would, and that could have been sports or music. But at the time, my brother being a drummer, I think I just kind of, and being 6 years older, I looked up to him, and he was in some bands in high school, and I would get to go see them perform. And so I thought that was really cool. So in my, young, I don't know what is, young formative years before high school, I just started, my mom said, "Hey, do you want to take up guitar lessons?" And she was committed to taking me every week. And I actually grew up in Kirkwood, Missouri, which is where the famous Mel Bay Music was. If anybody is a musician out there, he had his own store, but he created some of the famous tutorial books that are still used today. So a lot of public publications, and just a constant passion to figure out how to play an instrument. And then obviously in high school, just used it, sports, really, I loved sports, but it wasn't really working for me in high school. I didn't grow, I didn't have my growth spurt, and I tried out for some sports and didn't make it. So I was looking for something that it could be kind of my identity in high school, and so guitar seemed to be something that I played, and friends would come over and they're like, "Wow, you're pretty good at that," and I would just sit on the edge of my bed and just work on it for hours, and just fell in love with trying to be better and trying to play like the musicians I would hear on the radio. So that was kind of the start of it, and just driven to play and get to that level where I could actually play songs in a band like what I've heard on the radio or VHS tapes or whatever I was looking at. So, and then MTV and all the big videos came out, and when I was in the 80s growing up, and so just then getting to see these rock stars or celebrity guitar players performing, I was like, wow, that looks pretty cool. How do I? And then I could really actually see how they were pulling things off on the instrument, so it would give me the visual as well. So that helped.
So you were determined at probably, I guess, at a fairly early age that you were going to take this from the amateur level to the professional level. When did you make that decision and how did you make that decision?
Sure. It was probably later in high school when, and every kid starts to try to figure out what the next chapter of life is. And, I was so into music, but growing up in the Midwest, making a living playing music was not really something on our radar as a family for my
Mhm.
dad. And, he always wanted me to get a degree and at least have that behind me so I could pursue business or something else in the future. So that was a little tough, but between us, because I really had music on my mind and felt like, hey, I want to give this a shot. And my mom and dad wanted me to go to college, so I started really, and this is before internet days, so it was a little harder to find research and look at universities, but started researching and asking around about music programs that had colleges that had universities that had music programs that were strong. And I really wasn't a jazzer, so a lot of the schools had more jazz programs,
Mhm.
not commercial music or pop rock type
Mhm.
of. There were a few, like Berkeley is up in Boston, and there was a North Texas State had a really good jazz program. I think Miami was one I looked at, but it wasn't until I found, I didn't have Nashville on my radar at all. It was really Nashville was kind of a small country town, and I didn't grow up listening to country music, but ended up I met a musician my senior year of high school. I met a musician that came through in St. Louis on a tour, and I had a connection to him and went and saw him, and he spent a little time with me, and he said, I studied music in Nashville at a small little school called Belmont College, and they have a commercial music degree. And I was like, commercial music degree? That sounds really interesting. So I kind of looked into it. Actually, he introduced me to his guitar professor at the time when he was there, who
Mhm.
was still there, and that's who ended up being my professor. And so I ended up coming to Nashville and attending Belmont. And looking back now, it was just such a important piece of where I'm at today. So.
Well, it's one thing to have those aspirations. It's another thing to actually become a professional, even on a limited and minor scale. But you took it to the top level there. Take us through that journey.
Yeah, you can obviously in anything we do, we can map out kind of how we would like to see things evolve and move forward in our careers and lives. So I hadn't really thought farther than I'd love to make a living I want to make a living doing this. I love to perform. I'm going to Nashville. I'm gonna study as hard as I can and practice as hard as I can and try to meet the right people. That was really all I had, besides just had to put those steps in front of me to do that. So it was getting to Nashville. I think when I got here, living in the dorms, I remember moving in and thinking, whoa, it was the pool of talent just got raised the bar heavily
Mm,
because you got kids coming from all over the country to study music. And it was a different than just the Midwest,
yeah.
so it definitely pushed me to even like step up my game even more musically and learn and engross myself in the culture of music and not just music, but also the environment of living in a music town and learning who is just as important as what and there's relationships that have to be built. So it gave me that opportunity of, it was supposed to a 4-year program to practice, meet great people, network with people that were going to potentially be future industry veterans and make careers in Nashville. So, and a lot of that I didn't really realize until later that all those years were the networking that I was doing in these dorms. These were all kids that were going to either be on the business side of music or the creative and performing side that just kind of nurtured in school as we all kind of left and moved on to our careers in the industry. So it kind
Mm.
of worked in all different aspects of it, from relationships to the actual learning how to be a professional musician as well. So
So how'd you take that step from amateur student to professional?
Yeah, so and like I said, I really was passionate about the performance side. I love to perform live, and there are kind of two routes back then, still are in a way. There's your studio musicians, and you have your live entertainer performers, and they do cross paths some, and a lot of people can do both, but you kind of get niched a little bit in town here, and so I love the studio and still record and all that. But I just early on, I just wanted to be. I love the stage. I love to perform. I was very comfortable singing and playing on stage, and had done that a lot in high school and with bands, and so that's kind of the direction I was pursuing. And so from that, it was more just again playing with as many people as I could, meeting new artists that were looking for to have hold tryouts for new bands, and so that's record labels and managers, and a lot of it's just kind of being in the right place and playing and taking things that maybe you don't know are going to benefit, but you don't know who you're going to meet if you take gigs or things to show you and give you opportunities. So it was really just, especially in those last few years of my college life, we were playing on a lot of, they're called senior recitals, and a lot of the artists that were trying to leave and go be artists were doing their performance recitals, and we were playing on, as musicians, we were playing on as many as we could so that we could be kind of seen as well to future labels and managers. So that kind of all just happened, and then a lot of it's just tryouts and getting really good at the networking side, and then performing well in auditions to hopefully land top talent tours. That's kind of where we all were. And so as your name gets thrown around, you become maybe a go-to person for those side positions on big tours, or playing on albums and being a part of the studio scene here in Nashville. Kind of two different paths, but
Yeah. So that was so journey from amateur to expert is essentially the journey that you were on, and a lot of steps in between there. So you were, I guess, essentially, I mean, not just accidentally, but you were out there networking, doing the work, putting in the work, making all of those important connections and developing relationships all along the way.
mhm.
So Shania Twain's manager came in contact with you, saw you perform, and reached out to you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so kind of like that. I was fully in there were at the time in Nashville. Again, Nashville has changed so much, and there's just so much growth here, and music has, it used to be pretty strictly two different camps, and this is in the 90s. I'm dating myself here, but it was either really country or it was gospel and Christian music. And that
Mm,
was kind of your two different worlds, and they were pretty separate. So you had a pool of musicians and artists and labels and all that were kind of in those two different camps. That was before kind of everyone started coming here, and now we have rock and pop and everything.
mm,
But so I was already actively working in these industries, and Shania's husband at the time, Mutt Lang, who is a famous rock producer, had recorded her first album in town, and he was considered a rebel in the country music scene, because it was a very cliquey, small group of people, and he was seen as an outsider coming to Nashville as a European to make a country album. That was taboo at the time. That was
mm,
before, the crossover
mm,
kind of scene. So as he came and made that album, they had much success on the album, and the group of musicians that he ended up using on this studio album were a generation ahead of me at the time, and were fabulous musicians, obviously. And Mutt went to these guys and said, "Hey, my wife and I, obviously, we're gonna put together a tour, and I'm gonna need some young, fabulous musicians to kind of put this whole machine together." And so through all that, those mentors of mine, those musicians that were studio musicians, my name got thrown in a hat on that.
mhm,
And it was kind of like, hey, this new artist, Shania Twain, who's had success, is going to tour. Management would be interested in you submitting a videotape or some kind of performance reel. I said, sure. I don't know a lot about country or her music, but would love to, throw it out there. So they were in New York at the time, and I mailed a package up, and I guess they took a look at all the different musician submissions, and they had a very
mhm,
obviously specific thing that they were looking for. They looking for 9 musicians from all over the world, basically, and mine landed on their desk, and they saw something in it and decided that they wanted to give me a shot at. So it was very interesting. It was a different audition than I'd had in the past, where typically you would go into a room, you'd learn some songs, you'd play a few of their tunes with the rest of the musicians, and see how it worked. This was a trial by fire. Was his idea was we're going to spend a season auditioning players on live TV, and it was on
Mm.
the late night TV shows. So it was like learn one song, and we're going to go. I'm going to mix it all up and go play on shows like Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien and Saturday Night Live, and then I'll pick the people that I really want in the band through all those TV shows. So it was very interesting how he kind of did it. So it took
Oh.
about 6 months for us to finally find the perfect nine that he wanted, and I just happened to kind of get in early, and maybe I marked my spot early on so that so he got so I kept getting asked to come back for these single one-off shows, but I knew they were
Mhm.
tryouts, and I just kept getting asked back, and I kind of found my spot early on, and then he had to kind of find other pieces around me. So, and I helped with that some. Actually, it was great. So as I built that relationship with Mutt and Shania, I recommended friends. So that's another thing, there's those referrals of, hey, we're looking for somebody that plays percussion, sings, and plays a little harmonica. Do you know anybody? And so I start thinking about all the people I've worked with in the past. So that's kind of how that goes down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Enlightened investors, if you haven't done so already, be sure and click that like button and also click that share so others can take advantage of the content. And finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming episodes. Well, interesting journey. And so you spent a couple of years with Shania
8.
and toured all over the world.
Yeah.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. We had
Wow.
a fun journey, and it was another level. I call it my master's in music that I don't have anything on the wall from it like a piece of paper, but I learned more in that time with him, and just the journey of learning how to produce music and watching a master craft music and touring,
Mhm.
just how to put out something that is something that will
Mhm.
globally goes down as one of the biggest selling artists of all time. So
Yeah.
very fortunate and somehow got there. And like I said, it's not always fully being the best of the best. It's more just sometimes doors open and being
Mhm.
being ready for the opportunity and fulfilling a role that's needed and being a team
Yeah.
player.
So I'm assuming you were doing studio
Mm.
and touring. Just give us a little picture of the difference between studio work and performance work.
Sure. Two art forms that are very different. Studio work is very tedious. It really requires, somebody that has ideas that can come up with ideas quickly that are
Hmm.
memorable. You're playing a role that is, you have to have the right sound, the right touch, the feel, the right instruments, and to know kind of how to get to that final take that the producer and artist are looking for. So it takes a lot of precise playing and know-how when it comes to what to deliver and fast because you're on the clock. And so that's a different skill set. Be in the studio and sit in the chair with the headphones on and
Hmm.
and put something together. Because a lot of times those sessions, and I'm speaking, pop music and contemporary music. You're not given something to read. Now, if this was an orchestral session, maybe a Nashville symphony or something like that,
Hmm.
you could be a masterful player. You might not need to come up with anything because you're reading. You got to just perform whatever's been written and put in front of you. Different than this type of pop recording where you're coming up with the hooks, they call them, that are going to be memorable, that might be what people think, hear, and listen to and remember for years to come. Different. And then the
Hmm.
live side is art form, which I.
Go back to the
Oh,
studio.
sorry. Yeah, yeah,
So do you have charts or
yeah. Chord
what is
charts. So you might
you
say,
got the
hey,
charts? Yeah.
here's the temp. You might have a rough demo. Here's the kind of the structure of the song. You write out your chart. It's key of G or key, whatever key, and then it's going to be this sort of feel. And I need a special memorable hook at the beginning, maybe at the turnaround after the chorus. And Brent, why don't you fill that in there? Or maybe we want a keyboard part here. And so the producer's doing all of that, and then you're
Mhm.
going out and start. Usually, if it's a live session where there's musicians in the room, then your drummer's counting it off, and we're gonna try to do a couple takes. These days, with the technology and computers, sometimes a lot of that's just one person. You can do a lot of sessions now where you're trading files and you're not even in the same room, so which is
Yeah.
great too. But it's kind of evolved into that too, where you're playing on stuff that maybe has already been recorded and you're adding parts later. You know.
That doesn't sound like as much fun.
Yeah, it's called overdubs, but yeah, those overdubs are done maybe a lot of time because of cost and where we're not even in the same studio,
Yeah.
but trading stuff around. So, and then the live thing is a beautiful art form as well. I loved that part of my career as just how to effectively perform at the top of your game every night, but sweaty and running around, jumping around and performing. I had an artist one time call it controlled chaos because you try to give it your all every night and put on a great show, but also perform as well as you can musically and still you want to give people their money's worth, so you can't just stand. I seem to be on shows that were always high energy and cause wanted us to be involved in the show and not just sitting at a chair with a tux on or anything. That was never my gig. So
Well, you had a full life in conjunction with that, but you left that to go into real estate. Why did you make that transition?
yeah, it wasn't as much leaving. It wasn't a hard cut, and I still do have clients in the studio. I do audio and mixing and sound design, which I love. I think it'll always be a part of my work career and life, just even if it's less accounts, or jobs. But going back to growing up around commercial real estate's always been in my blood, I believe, from my father. And my wife's father was a realtor as well, a broker. And so we both have shared the passion of the creative side of real estate. And, we've always just enjoyed a creative side of flipping homes and fixing up things and having equity and moving that equity into something else and enjoy the short-term rentals and just it seems like it's another creative element of our lives that we enjoy and I think long term it's I don't think there's any better asset class that is a place that you can actually put your money and know that typically it's gonna do well over the long term even through different market cycles. So
What was your first deal in real estate?
way back, well, my dad, and I don't think I really knew that it was an investment at the time. When I came to Belmont here in Nashville to go to music school, he said, "Hey, I think we should buy a condo for you to live in and not." I lived in the dorms for a little bit. I think it was required, but after that, I was like, "Okay, I got to find a place to live." My dad said, "Let's buy something. Let's get you in and get you something that you can live in." And so at the time, I just thought, "Wow, this is cool." My dad's buying me a condo, but I didn't think of it as like I think now looking back, we joke about, he said, "Boy, you did pretty well in that first condo. You took the equity and then ended up snowballing and rolling into a bigger home." And then, as I got married and we were growing, so I think he knew what he was doing. He knew that investing in something in town was going to produce some equity that then I could go and use and purchase something else, And so that was my
Mhm.
first like experience of like what equity can do to then go on and buy and flip into something else and continue to grow your real estate portfolio. But that was a long time ago. So that was my first introduction to real estate and seeing things going up in value and using that equity to move forward. But I think it wasn't until so there's been a lot of the short-term rentals and trying different ways to fix and flip but I think in the last 4 to 5 years, the multifamily side has really been my intro into long-term thinking about exiting this world and hopefully at some point having passive income and assets that I can pass on to generations to come in my family. So that it feels like a bigger passion and a bigger vision than just me or my wife and I. So I think that's why we've moved into the multifamily space.
Multifamily.
Yeah,
Well, it is certainly multifamily has much more scalability than single families. Of course, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything.
sure.
But you currently are involved in, I think, something like 200 doors as general partners. I believe in Florida. Is that correct?
Georgia.
Georgia. Okay,
Mhm.
sorry about
All
that.
right. Yeah.
So you've elected to invest in Georgia rather than in Nashville. What prompted that decision?
It really wasn't a either or. I'm still actively looking in the Nashville MSA, and it's a great market. It's a tough market right now because a lot of competition, a lot of institutional money here coming in. 'Cause
Mhm.
obviously, everybody knows that it's a solid, great growth market and a lot of jobs and population growth here. So it's tougher. I'm getting to know brokers very well and doing all the things, so deal flow and underwriting, but I think you got to diversify. So as I've networked similar to music and audio, as I've networked in this space of investors and these investor groups and syndications. And I found a group I really connected with out of Dallas, and they just happened to be doing a deal in Warner Robins, Georgia, great
Mm.
market, small market, and they needed some co-sponsors and GPs to come in and help get the deal done. And I loved the deal and the underwriting and thought it was a great first 200 unit deal to get into. And so that's why Georgia. So there's,
Yeah.
we've all pinpointed like several markets that we kind of all are really looking at and why,
Mm.
obviously depending on the what's going on in those markets, with jobs and population and all that. So
So, what is your role in the GP?
I am I was a capital raiser and then now helping out a little bit on asset management with just being closest on boots on the ground and just overseeing some of the value add
Mm.
and
Okay.
property management, that type of stuff. So not a huge role, but it's a great way for me to be a part of the GP and kind of watch as the big
Mm.
asset managers are doing their weekly, calls and everything. So it's been a great
Right.
experience on that end.
Yeah. Well, Brent, tell us what you have to offer our audience and how they can take advantage of that.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, it's been a pleasure being on. Basically, my journey has been, music and now in real estate, which has been a fun ride. Really right now what I'm offering is I would love for people to learn more about, passive investing in real estate. I think it's a powerful place to, put your money. My wife and I are just learning so much and really believe that investing passively in these larger assets and being able to scale your investments, it's just a great place that you can put money into and that obviously grow your net worth and just have more, there's so many advantages, but I think just owning real assets and scalability, it's a powerful tool. So we're just excited, and so we're basically, sourcing deals, looking for opportunities for others to come in and invest with us passively. So, love for you to reach out to me anytime. You can reach me at my email, Brent at i65capitalinvestments.com, or any of the socials. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. That's where I'm at right now. So, and I have a website, i65capitalinvestments.com. You can sign up. You can get if you want to learn more about investing, I've got you can sign up and get a little ebook, a passive investing book, some tips on what passive investing is, and then sign up and get my newsletter.
Well, Brent, tell us about one of your most difficult setbacks in life and how did you come through that time and what was the lesson learned from that?
Oh gosh, let's see, setbacks. We all have them, right? I mean, there were always setbacks. I mean, there were things in music that you always have aspirations for certain things. You raise the bar when you move forward in your lives and careers. I'd say there were. I don't know if there was a specific one there. There were definitely tryouts for tours and sessions and things that I wanted that didn't ever go my way. And I would just continue to put your best foot forward and just get better at what you do. Real estate, it's still the same. It's a grind, especially with the state of the markets and interest rates and deals fall through and LOIs don't get approved, and so it's constantly happening. I have to wake up every day and just go, okay, it's another day and grateful to be alive and just keep going, work hard and learn more, and I still think it's a lot of it is networking and building relationships wherever I can, just to build quality relationships with others that are in the industries and keep going.
Well, Brent, it has been a delight meeting you today. Wonderful guest, very entertaining. I've certainly enjoyed your story here. Thanks for being with us, Brent.
Alan, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Enlightened investors, wait, don't go just yet. I just want to remind you about our recently launched webinar that you will not want to miss. If you're at all curious and would like to learn more about how real estate investing can diversify your investment portfolio, alleviate the anxiety associated with Wall Street swings, leverage your 401ks and IRAs to substantially increase the return on your investment, and do all of this with turnkey, hands-off passive real estate investments, then you'll want to immediately go to stevetalker.com/webinar. In the webinar, we'll also address the common dubious investment schemes that you want to avoid. To access the webinar, go to stevetalker.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you in the webinar.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.